All right, let's get to the Goldilocks team. Who is just right for you, Kyle?
The Goldilocks team that's just right for me is the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't argue with winning.
Boo.
You can't argue with what they've done in the last 2 years, the last however many years. Was it 6 that Patrick Mahomes has been in the NFL? 7? I don't even know. I just know that we're lucky to get to watch him. And we talked about Joe Thuney moving to left tackle and the luxury that they have there with an all-pro, pretty much triumvirate on the inside of the offensive line. You can move these guys around. The question for me remains, is the group going to be best with Thuney at left tackle or Thuney at left guard? Are they able to fix or get guys up to speed? Is DJ Humphries going to be back? What's the hamstring looking like? But at the end of the day, you can't argue with winning. This team has a 1 in the loss column. They find a way to get it done, regardless of who they're playing, who is playing for them. And we know this about the Chiefs. They're just getting healthier. They're getting healthier all the time. They signed Kareem Hunt. You and I kind of laughed about it, Mike. Kareem Hunt has been a massive part of that offense. Hollywood Brown back in, 5 receptions last game. Xavier Worthy playing like a dude who's not a gadget player. He's playing like a wide receiver. They are as well coached on both sides of the ball as anybody. It may not be as sexy on defense like some of this Brian Flores pressure packages, but I'll tell you what, there's no group who's played in bigger games and had better success than the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And we know it goes without saying what Patrick Mahomes can do, but they've gotten enough out of everybody that they've asked something of. And I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are the perfect Goldilocks, just right at the number 1 spot. They've earned it.
I have no takes on the Chiefs. I can't.
Of course you can't. Let's go back to early in the season when you kept burying them week in and week out. They're not worthy.
I did not bury them.
Yeah,
I forgot you did that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but I remind everybody because he had tweets ready for me at certain games.
Mike, me and Pete went on yesterday. We went on HQ together, and there's a new anchor named Russ, who's a really nice guy, but he kept saying the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ooh.
And he slid it in there like we weren't going to notice. I noticed. I will be talking to Russ when I go in there today.
And Mike had tweets ready to send to me on gay. He said at me or something, and he was and you know what, Mike, you buried. But here's the difference between this Chiefs team. You talk about Thuney, and we know they had to solidify that left tackle spot. But getting Hollywood Brown going with Worthy changes the entire dynamic of that offense. You now have guys who can go down the field. You got guys who can separate. It's not Hopkins, physical, 50-50 ball winner, sit in the zone guy. It's not Kelsey sit down in the zone guy because he can't run like he used to anymore. It's guys who can go. And when Patrick Mahomes has guys who can go, it changes the whole dynamic of the offense. And I think
guys who can go and time to throw.
Yep, exactly. Bingo. Hey, you're a poet. You don't know it.
And look, Joe Thuney is such a freaking guard because he sets inside out and he runs guys by. Oftentimes, these young tackles, they want to jump out of their stance and get to the point of contact before the defensive lineman, before these defensive ends. These rushers are superior athletes to us. We know that, and we're moving backwards. Joe Thuney has a rock-solid plan. Patrick Mahomes knows Joe Thuney's plan, understands that he can now step up in the pocket, not worried about a guy getting beat underneath at the tackle position. Creates a lot of presence of mind, I would imagine, for a quarterback. We saw the longest regular season rushing touchdown of Patrick Mahomes' career last week. And by no surprise, Joe Thuney runs his guy by. There's a hallway there for Patrick Mahomes. He can do a number of things. And also, what does Patrick do? He throws the ball well running towards the line of scrimmage. I think that's going to be a big thing moving into the playoffs.
All right, my Goldilocks team is the Houston Texans at number 14, a team I was wildly high on heading into this year. I thought they had a good chance to be a top 5 team in the NFL. I thought they could have been one of the main challengers to the Kansas City Chiefs. I no longer believe that. I think going in, they are the worst team in the AFC playoff picture. I just think that, yes, they'll get a home game by advent of winning the South, but with no Tank Dell, with no Stephon Diggs, in an offense that was already struggling mightily to move the football. I mean, no one predicted this. CJ Stroud's 25th in the NFL in EPA per dropback. He's lower than Drake May this year. And it's like everyone makes these excuses about Drake May and his
lower than Caleb
sort
Williams
of talent. It's not lower than Caleb Williams, sorry. Not to get your hopes up there. I would have said Caleb Williams if it was, so trust me. to make a point. That would have been
Trying to help,
high up
Caleb.
there.
Trying to help.
But it's close. And again, the offensive line, we know about their offensive line woes, but it's like, it ain't as bad as what Drake May's dealing with, right? It ain't as bad as what some other guys are dealing with. So I thought this defense would be awesome. They kind of have been. They have the pieces there. They could shut down people. It's just they have not shown anything offensively at all this year to make me think a turnaround's coming anytime soon. Because of that, 14th's perfect. They're not a team that I think can challenge any of the top contenders in the AFC right now.
Mike,
it's unfortunate, but
there's a lot going on there with injuries, with offensive line play, and we've highlighted so many of these coordinators. They put their guys in positions. What do you think your constructive criticism would be to the Houston Texans? Not telling them just stay healthy. What would be your constructive criticism?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just it's almost counterintuitive. And this gets brought up on like Bengals broadcast a lot. And I've been saying like, get 5 out more and get quick game going with CJ Stroud. That's what he is probably at his best at, is just knowing immediately post snap based off of the look he's getting where that first guy's going to be. And just make that the basis for the offense. Because right now, what they're trying to do is not necessarily the best suited for his talents and what he's just best at the quarterback position. Because the more they give him time back there, just the more skittish you see him becoming in the pocket, because he doesn't trust the protection. And so when it's 5 out, there's not really trust in the protection. It's just like the ball has to come out. There's no sitting back there at all. So you're not even thinking about the protection. It's just like, I'm throwing it regardless. So I think building more of the offense around that is where I want to see the Texans go going forward. Now, obviously, that would have been better when you had Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, who are pure separators, quick guys off the line of scrimmage who can get open in a blink. But without them, even changing into, this offense going down the stretch, I don't think it's going to make the difference. Unfortunately, just the guys aren't walking through that door outside Nico.
Look, there's a certain level you get to when you're a young quarterback, right? And we saw that in the expectations with the team around that young quarterback. We saw it 2 years ago with Trevor Lawrence. And remember they went in the last season. And I was guilty of it as anybody. Oh, they're ready. They've arrived. They're ready to go. Young teams have to learn how to handle success. And the Texans had success last year, and we rushed it. Everybody. Look, I thought they'd win the division. I cautioned people. I said, they're going to have to deal with success, and we don't know if they can handle it. He hasn't handled it very well. He's done a bad job with it. And, he did a lot of stuff this offseason, remember?
I know. He was on the draft show with me on Bleacher Report. And I remember going, and they told me like 2 weeks before, they're like, hey, CJ Stroud's going to be on. And I'm like, what in the world? Like,
then he went to Japan with Micah Parsons.
And he went on like a world tour with Michael Parsons. And they have the same agency. And I remember asking him, I'm like, man, why'd you want to do this? And he's like, I don't know. They just asked me to. And I was like, that's like a weird answer. They just ask you to, and that's because of that you want to do it. Because like, it seemed a lot like he was kind of just doing what a lot of people are. When you get to that status, a lot of people are going to reach out and ask you to do something for it, to do like XYZ, to do this appearance, to do that. And it just seemed like this offseason, he didn't know when to say no. He didn't know when to be like, hey. Now obviously, like, that could be completely irrelevant of what's going on in Houston and why they haven't had success. But also, it's like there's something there, right? I do think there is
something there. And he said they asked him, maybe that was with you guys, asked him where he ranked himself as quarterbacks. And
that wasn't with us. But
he said he was third.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't arrived, dude. You're a rookie quarterback, essentially going into your second season. You should be spending. Look, I'm critical of that. Go take your time off. When you have your time off, take your time off.
Yes.
But you should be able to focus on a lot of different. Football is your number one priority. You only have so many earning years in that body. Sure, make some money off the field. I get it. Okay, and here's the other elephant in the room for this week when it relates to him. You're entitled to have your emotions flow out during a football game. And Kyle knows where I'm going with this because I didn't like the look of your starting quarterback crying, overflowing crying. Yes, Tank Dell's his buddy. Go over there, kneel with him, sit down, put your hand on him and say, look, we're going to pray for you. We hope you're okay. I love you, man. Get up and get away from it. When your teammates see your starting quarterback in that state at that moment in a key game for you, that's not a good look. That is not a good look. I understand emotions. I understand the ability to express yourself and let him out. But go over, and he's your best friend. Go over there, kneel with him, pray with him, say what you have to do to him. But don't pop up and let the team and the world see you in that state. I just don't think that was a good look for him as a quarterback.
I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit, Pete. You are consistent. And I will say this: when you are in the National Football League and you deal with these guys all the time, and you're best friends with some of these guys, to see them go down in such a traumatic way. I remember when Zach Miller went down in New Orleans in the corner of the end zone, and his knee popped completely out. He was in the hospital for maybe many weeks, with dozens of surgeries to try to get his leg back in the right spot. First and foremost, you're not thinking about the optics of your reaction. Your reaction is organic more often than not. And our shock response for everybody is different. Some people go silent. Some people get angry. Some people get emotional. And it's obvious to me that C.J. Stroud is confident enough in his standing in the locker room and his place in society to let his emotions show. And I appreciate that. But one thing I'll never do is bash a guy for showing emotions. Obviously, people can say, don't cry, cry. But at the end of the day, when something like that happens and your focus is shifted completely to your buddy who's on the ground with his knee popping out of his football pants, you don't even think about the fact that there's cameras on you. So I would say that it's probably as organic a reaction as you can see. And is it the way I would have responded? No, I probably would have been pissed, chucking my helmet.
Right.
People would have probably had something to say about that too, Pete.
Well, people have,
but it's a new day and age. We've been told to show our emotions. We've been told don't be ashamed of having love for your brother and your teammates.
I'm not, the camera stuff doesn't bother me. I'm talking about his teammates looking at him and seeing that, and you have to go console your starting quarterback sitting on the bench almost. And then I get it. You're angry. You're mad. And look, he has a right to feel any way he wants to and shows emotions. I'm just saying from an optic standpoint, if I were his teammate, I'd say, come on, dude. And you would say to him, and my thing would be, it's not like the Hamlin thing where we thought he was, dying on the field. I understand that. This was a knee injury. Football injuries happen in the National Football League, and
this is everything when you're a football player. Everything is what your body is, and for C.J. Stroud, everything is what your receivers are. And for Tank Dell to go down, who's his best buddy, I can understand the reaction and him wearing his heart on his sleeve. I appreciate the organic nature of that. But at the same time, I understand why people would say, I don't want to see him, that's not the reaction.
Crying. It's not crying. It's the distraught, emotional, carry it over to the bench thing for me.
I agree with the way Pete's saying it. If you cry, there's a difference between showing emotion in a somewhat
like no Sean Marino during the anthem versus
correct.
I mean, this showing that it means something, but that also hey, I'm going to lead us through this. But the way Stroud was reacting was, if you're looking to him for leadership at that point in time, you're not going to come away being we have a job to do still. You're going to come away saying, this is over, right? It's almost the feeling you got from that team after that. And
it's the feeling they had all season with their lack of success. Granted, they are the division winners, and you said it best. They're the worst. They're the worst team in that side of the playoffs. In many people's opinions, C.J. Stroud feels that. He also feels the expectations. He also knows people are talking about him and Micah and the offseason and Japan and all this. And this is just a culmination of so many things. And we've all been there where there's this one straw that broke the camel's back.
To put some context to it,
maybe
though.
I'm a crude man, but I think after a certain point, I would have gone over to the bench and said, "Hey, dude,
Lock in."
Right. Get your head out of your behind and go play football. It's your job, and our job is hinging on how you react to the next series when you go out there. We all love Tank Dell. We want him healthy. We want him on the field. But Kyle, you know this, and this happens in the NFL. It's a cruel business. It's a cruel business. When a guy gets hurt, and Tank Dell is a big part of their team. But you know this, next week, 2 weeks, when Tank Dell comes limping through there on his crutches,
He's a ghost.
He's done. He's dead to them. That's just the reality of the NFL for this time being. Hopefully he comes back and he can play again. But in the moment, your job is to go win football games, and Tank Dell is no longer part of that. It's sad. It's a cruel business. But the way he reacted to it, I get it. Let yourself go, get angry, get upset, get emotional. But at some point, you have to stop and go on to the next thing.
For some context, Tank Dell, C.J. Stroud was literally the reason he got drafted to the Texans. He told them after he drafted him that the front office there in Houston that he wanted Tank Dell. They had thrown together before that draft series and knew he was one of, obviously, the best separators in that draft class. They got him in the third round, best friends. That's why the emotions were to the point they were. But again, I do tend to agree that there was a difference between being upset in the moment and being emotional in the moment and how Stroud displayed it. So,
and more power to him, by the way. You're entitled to handle yourself any way you want to. And that's, if you're an emotional guy and he certainly is, handle it the way you want to. But it also doesn't preclude people from saying, "Hey, you went a little too far," either. And that's where I think. And look, I'm one of those guys. Move on to the next play. You have to handle it. That's your job.